The Sterling Rose Ballroom was suffocating in pastels. Lavender balloons, cream and gold streamers, white roses cascading from crystal vases, and a four-tier cake decorated with fondant baby booties. My sister Adela's baby shower was everything she'd orchestrated, luxurious, Instagram perfect, and entirely centered on her impending motherhood. I sat at a table near the French windows, watching 40 women exclaim over monogrammed blankets and compare notes on the best pediatricians in Boston. Adela radiated satisfaction in the center of the room, one hand resting on her 7-month belly, the other holding court as she accepted gift after elaborately wrapped gift. Amanda, sweetheart. My Aunt Carol appeared beside me, settling into the empty chair with practiced sympathy. How are you holding up? This must be so hard for you. Before I could respond, my cousin Jennifer leaned across the table. Carol, don't. You know about Amanda's situation. What situation? Carol's confusion was genuine. Jennifer's voice dropped to a theatrical whisper that carried to the neighboring tables. The diagnosis. 5 years ago, the doctors said she'd never be able to carry a child. Oh, honey. Carol's hand landed on mine, warm and pitying. That's heartbreaking. I had no idea. It was a difficult time, I said evenly, checking my phone. 2:47 p.m. But you've adjusted? Jennifer asked, her tone coated in false concern. Found other ways to find fulfillment. I've built a good life. That's so strong of you, Carol said. Not every woman could cope with that kind of loss. What loss are we discussing? My mother Beatrice materialized behind us, carrying a champagne flute and wearing her most maternal expression, the one that always preceded her cruelest observations. We were just talking about Amanda's infertility, Jennifer announced. How brave she's been about accepting it. Mom's smile sharpened. Yes. Amanda has learned to live within her limitations. I glanced at my phone again. 2:52 p.m., 8 more minutes. Across the room, Adela was opening presents with theatrical delight, holding up each tiny outfit for the crowd to admire. Her best friend Madison sat beside her, carefully recording each gift in a leather-bound notebook, occasionally glancing in my direction with what she probably thought was subtle pity. The nursery is already finished, Mom was telling Carol. Adela sent me photos. Custom furniture from Italy, a mural of clouds and angels. It's absolutely divine. How wonderful to have a daughter who can give you grandchildren, Carol said, then seemed to realize her mistake. Oh, Amanda, I didn't mean. It's fine. I cut her off gently. You're so gracious about it, Jennifer said. Some women would be bitter. Bitterness serves no purpose. I took a sip of sparkling water, watching the clock on my phone tick to 2:55 p.m. Still, Mom said, her voice carrying that edge of satisfaction she tried to mask as concern, it must be difficult sitting here, watching your younger sister prepare for the blessing you'll never experience. The baby showers, the nursery planning, the joy of motherhood. All the things that define a woman's purpose. I met her eyes over the rim of my glass. Is that what you think defines a woman's purpose? Well, naturally. What could be more fulfilling than creating life? Than giving your parents the grandchildren they deserve? My phone showed 2:58 p.m. I suppose, I said quietly, we all define fulfillment differently. Before I tell you what happens when those doors open at 3 p.m., do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Because what my mother doesn't know is about to change everything, and you won't want to miss a single second of this story. 5 years ago, I sat in Dr. Morrison's office at Boston General, still wearing the hospital bracelet from 3 days earlier. The car accident had left me with a fractured pelvis, internal bleeding, and what the doctors called significant reproductive trauma. The damage was extensive, Dr. Morrison said, her voice gentle but clinical. Your chances of conceiving naturally are extremely low. I'd estimate less than 5%. I nodded, processing the information through a fog of pain medication and shock. My boyfriend Marcus sat beside me, his hand tight around mine. We weren't even engaged yet. We'd only been dating 8 months. Less than 5% isn't zero, I'd said. Technically, no. But Amanda, I need you to understand the reality. Even if conception occurred, carrying to term would be exceptionally high risk. I'm recommending you consider alternative paths to parenthood, if that's something you want in your future. I'd left that appointment with pamphlets about adoption and surrogacy, and a strange sense of relief that the decision about children had been postponed indefinitely. Marcus and I were still figuring out our relationship. This bought us time. My mother's reaction had been immediate and theatrical. Over, she'd said when I called to tell her, her voice rising to a pitch that made me hold the phone away from my ear. Your life is over before it even began? Mom, that's not what I said. I said the doctors think natural conception is unlikely. Unlikely means impossible, Amanda. Don't sugarcoat this. You're 28 years old, and you'll never give me grandchildren. Do you understand what you've lost? I've been sitting in my apartment, my pelvis still healing, still taking medication for the pain, and my mother was making my injuries about her disappointed expectations. Adela will want children someday, I'd offered weakly. That's not the point. You're my firstborn. I had plans. I was going to help you with your baby, be there for every milestone, finally be a grandmother. And now what? Now I have to wait for your sister to get her life together? She's only 23, Amanda. She's years away from being ready. The conversation had devolved from there. By the time I hung up, I understood that in my mother's eyes, I'd become damaged goods. A daughter who'd failed her most fundamental purpose. The family dinner 2 weeks later had been worse. Mom had gathered everyone, my father, Adela, my Aunt Carol, my Uncle Robert, and announced my condition like she was delivering a eulogy. Amanda's accident has left her unable to have children, she'd said, her voice heavy with practiced grief. The doctors have confirmed it. We need to rally around her during this devastating time. Adela had looked genuinely sympathetic then, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand.
I'm so sorry, Amanda.
That's awful. But Mom wasn't finished. It's important that we don't ask Amanda about children or motherhood. We don't want to remind her of what she's lost. Her life will look different now. Emptier, perhaps, but will help her find meaning in other ways. My father had cleared his throat uncomfortably. Beatrice, maybe we should. I'm simply stating facts, Richard. Amanda needs to accept her new reality. She'll never experience pregnancy, never hold her own baby, never know the joy of motherhood. The sooner she accepts that, the sooner she can move on. I'd sat there, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth, watching my mother construct a tragedy I hadn't fully felt yet. The gift opening segment dragged on with excruciating slowness. Each tiny sleeper, each stuffed animal, each silver rattle was met with collective coos and applause. I checked my phone discreetly. 3:02 p.m. 2 minutes late. Traffic on the pike must be heavier than usual. Amanda. My Aunt Carol's sister Diane slid into the chair Jennifer had vacated. I just heard about your situation. I'm so deeply sorry. Thank you, I said automatically. My friend's daughter had something similar. She's found purpose volunteering at a children's hospital. Maybe that would help you feel connected to children, even if you can't have your own. I smiled tightly. I appreciate the suggestion. It's just that I'd hate to see you become one of those bitter women who resent other people's happiness. You seem to be handling this well, but watching your sister today must be triggering. I'm genuinely happy for Adela. Of course you are, Diane said in a tone that suggested she didn't believe me at all. But if you ever need to talk to someone about processing your grief, I know an excellent therapist who specializes in infertility trauma. 3:04 p.m. I glanced toward the ballroom entrance. Still empty. Madison was now standing beside Adela, holding a microphone. Before we move to dessert, Adela has a few words she'd like to share. My sister stood, smoothing her cream maternity dress over her belly. The room fell silent except for the soft clink of champagne flutes. I want to thank every single one of you for being here today, Adela began, her voice carrying that rehearsed quality of someone who'd practiced this speech. Brad and I are so blessed, so incredibly fortunate to be starting this journey into parenthood. Applause rippled through the crowd. I know that not everyone is as lucky as we are, she continued, and I felt the shift in the room's energy. Everyone's awareness suddenly sharpening, focusing. Some women face challenges that make motherhood difficult or even impossible. Her eyes found mine across the tables, held for a beat too long. And my heart truly breaks for those women. I can't imagine the pain of wanting a child and being told you'll never experience that joy. Never feel a baby move inside you. Never hold your own newborn. Never hear someone call you mommy. The sympathy in the room was suffocating. At least a dozen women turned to look at me with expressions of practiced concern. So today, as we celebrate this blessing, Adela said, her hand moving to her belly in what had become her signature gesture, I want us all to remember to be grateful. Grateful for our health, our fertility, our ability to create life. Because it's a gift that not everyone receives. Some women will spend their entire lives empty, watching from the sidelines while others experience the greatest joy a woman can know. 3:06 p.m. We should never take motherhood for granted, my sister concluded. Because for women for some women, it's a dream that will never come true. The room erupted in applause. Several women dabbed at their eyes. Mom beamed at Adela with unmistakable pride. I took another sip of water and checked my phone one more time. 3:08 p.m. Any minute now. Before the applause for Adela's speech fully faded, my mother stood. She didn't ask for the microphone. She didn't need it. Beatrice Dube had spent 63 years perfecting the art of commanding a room through sheer force of personality. If I may add something, she said, her voice carrying effortlessly across the ballroom. Madison handed her the microphone anyway, and Mom accepted it with the grace of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. Adela's words were beautiful and so important. But I think we need to address something directly, with love and honesty, rather than dancing around it with polite euphemisms. I felt my spine straighten. My phone showed 3:10 p.m. My daughter Amanda, Mom continued, gesturing toward me with her free hand, suffered a devastating accident 5 years ago. The medical consequences were severe and permanent. She will never be able to have children of her own. The room went completely silent. Even the catering staff paused in the doorway. Now, I know we've all been trying to be sensitive, trying not to mention it directly. But I think that does Amanda a disservice. She's not fragile. She's strong. She's faced her reality with remarkable courage. 3:11 p.m. The truth is, Mom said, her tone shifting to something that sounded like compassion but felt like exhibition, Amanda is too broken to experience motherhood. Her body can't do what women's bodies are designed to do. And while that's tragic, truly tragic, I think we honor her more by acknowledging it openly rather than whispering about it in corners. I could feel every eye in the room on me. Some women looked horrified at Mom's bluntness. Others nodded, as if she were delivering profound wisdom. As a mother myself, I can't imagine a greater loss, she continued. To know that you'll never hold your own baby, never experience pregnancy, never pass on your legacy to the next generation. It's a kind of death, really. The death of a future that will never exist. Jennifer had gone pale. Even Adela looked uncomfortable, shifting in her seat. But Amanda has accepted her limitations, Mom said, and there was that word again, hanging in the air like an indictment. She's learned to find meaning in other areas of her life. Work, hobbies, whatever brings her satisfaction. It's not motherhood, of course. Nothing can replace that. But it's something. 3:13 p.m. So today, As we celebrate Adela's blessing, I want us all to hold space for Amanda's loss. To recognize that while we're welcoming new life into our family, Amanda will forever remain on the outside of that experience. She'll be the aunt, never the mother, the observer, never the participant. Mom's eyes met mine across the room, and in them I saw something that chilled me, satisfaction masked as sympathy. "I'm proud of how you've handled this, sweetheart," she said directly to me. "You've shown such grace in accepting that you're damaged goods. That takes real strength." Damaged goods. The words echoed through the ballroom. Several women gasped softly. My Aunt Carol's hand flew to her mouth. "I only wish," Mom concluded, "that this hadn't happened to you. That you could have been whole. But we play the cards we're dealt, don't we? And your cards, unfortunately, don't include motherhood." She handed the microphone back to Madison and sat down, looking pleased with herself. As if she'd just delivered an inspirational speech rather than publicly dissected her daughter's supposed failures in front of 40 witnesses. My phone vibrated in my hand. A text from my nanny, Sarah. "Pulling into the parking lot now. Ready when you are." I checked the time. 3:15 p.m. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The sound cut through the uncomfortable silence that had settled over the room. "Mom," I said clearly, my voice steady. "I think there's something you should see." Every face in the ballroom turned toward me as I walked to the center of the room. My heels clicked against the hardwood with each measured step. Mom's expression shifted from satisfaction to confusion. "Amanda, what are you?" "Just wait," I said quietly. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text. "Come in." The ballroom doors, the grand double doors that opened onto the Sterling Roses marble foyer, swung open. Sarah appeared first, her professional demeanor perfectly intact despite the weight of what she was pushing, a custom-made triple stroller, navy blue with chrome accents, designed specifically for triplets. The kind of stroller that costs more than most people's monthly rent. But it wasn't the stroller that made the room go silent. It was the 3 toddlers strapped into it. 2-year-old Lily sat in the left seat, her dark curls tied up with a pink bow, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. In the middle, Mason wore his tiny Red Sox jersey, his green eyes, my eyes, bright and curious as he took in the sea of strangers. And on the right, Sophie sucked her thumb, her other hand wrapped around the blanket she refused to sleep without. My children. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Not a glass clinked. Not a chair moved. 40 women sat frozen, their expressions ranging from confusion to shock to slowly dawning comprehension. Sarah navigated the stroller expertly through the tables, moving toward where I stood. The wheels made soft sounds against the floor. Lily spotted me, and her face lit up. "Mama," she called out, her voice high and clear and unmistakably directed at me. The word detonated like a bomb in the quiet room.
"Mama. Mama."
Mason joined in, bouncing in his seat with excitement. Sophie pulled her thumb from her mouth. "Mama home." I walked to the stroller and crouched down, my cocktail dress pooling around me.
Babies.
"Were you good for Sarah?" "They were perfect," Sarah said, her slight smile telling me she understood exactly what was happening here. Though Mason did try to convince me that ice cream counted as lunch. "That's my boy," I said, unbuckling him first and lifting him onto my hip. He immediately wrapped his arms around my neck. Lily was next, demanding to be picked up with the imperious tone of a child who knows she's adored. Sophie I settled on my other hip, completing the familiar weight of my children in my arms. I turned to face the room. 40 faces stared back at me in various states of shock. My mother had gone completely white. Adela's mouth hung open. Jennifer looked like she might faint. "Everyone," I said calmly, adjusting Lily's bow which had slipped sideways, "I'd like you to meet my children. Lily, Mason, and Sophie. They turned 2 last month." The math was simple enough. 2-year-olds meant conception roughly 3 years ago. 3 years after the accident that supposedly ended my chance at motherhood. 3 years after my mother had declared my life over. But Mom's voice came out strangled. You can't, the doctors said. The doctors said less than 5% chance. I corrected. Not 0. And as it turns out, I'm very good at beating odds. Mason squirmed in my arms, wanting down to explore. I set all 3 children carefully on the floor, keeping a hand on Sophie's shoulder as she oriented herself to the new space. Sarah moved to stand beside them, her presence a quiet reassurance that they were safe. I don't understand, Mom said, her voice shaking. You've had children for 2 years? 2 years, and you never told me. 3 years, actually, I said, smoothing down Lily's dress. I was pregnant with them 3 years ago. Carried them to 36 weeks, which is excellent for triplets. They were born healthy, 7 pounds combined, and they've been thriving ever since. The room remained frozen. Diane's champagne glass tilted in her hand, forgotten. Carol's mouth opened and closed without sound. Jennifer had tears streaming down her face, though whether from shock or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. Triplets, Adela whispered. You had triplets. High-risk pregnancy, obviously, I continued, as if I were discussing the weather. I spent the last trimester on bed rest. Dr. Morrison, remember her mom? The one who gave me that less than 5% chance. She managed my care personally. Called it a medical miracle. 3 years, Mom repeated, and now I could hear anger creeping into her shock. You've been a mother for 3 years and you never said a word? That's not entirely accurate, I said. I've been a mother for 2 years and 8 months. The first 4 months don't really count since they mostly just ate and slept. Lily had discovered the cake table and was toddling toward it with determination. Sarah gently redirected her back toward me. But why? Carol finally found her voice. Why would you hide this from us? From your own mother? I looked at Mom, really looked at her, and saw the exact expression I'd been avoiding for 3 years. The need to control. The desire to insert herself into every decision, every moment, every aspect of my children's lives. Do you remember what you said to me after the accident? I asked her quietly. At that family dinner where you announced my condition to everyone? Mom's face flushed. I was trying to help you process. You said my life was over. That I'd never know joy. That I'd be empty forever, watching from the sidelines while everyone else experienced real fulfillment. I paused as Mason grabbed my leg, and I ran my hand through his soft hair. You didn't ask how I was feeling. You didn't ask what the doctors actually said. You just decided my story was finished and started writing my tragedy for me. I was being realistic, Mom protested. You were being controlling, I corrected. And I knew the moment I found out I was pregnant, that if I told you, you'd try to take over. You'd have opinions about every doctor's appointment, every parenting choice, every single decision. You'd make my miracle about your needs instead of my children's well-being. Sophie had found the gift bags on a nearby table and was investigating their contents with intense focus. A woman, I think it was Madison, moved to stop her, but I shook my head. She's fine. She's just curious. So you just what? Disappeared? Adela asked. Her hand had dropped from her belly. For 3 years you just vanished from the family? I didn't vanish, I said. I came to Christmas. I came to Easter. I showed up for your engagement party and your bridal shower. I was here today, wasn't I? But you never mentioned. That's right, I interrupted. I never mentioned. Because every single time we were together, the conversation somehow circled back to my supposed tragedy. My empty life. My broken body. My inability to give Mom the grandchildren she deserved. Grandchildren I deserved? Mom's voice rose, sharp and defensive. I'm their grandmother, Amanda. I had a right to know they existed. Rights. I kept my tone level, watching Mason attempt to climb onto a chair. Sarah moved smoothly to spot him. You think you had rights to my children before they were even born? I'm your mother. And that's exactly the problem. I crossed my arms, feeling the weight of 3 years of silence finally lifting. Do you know what you said when Adela announced she was pregnant? The day she called you? Adela's face went pale. She knew what was coming. You told her you'd already picked out nursery themes. You'd made a list of acceptable names. You'd scheduled yourself to be at the hospital for the delivery and planned to stay at her house for the first month to help. You'd researched pediatricians and signed her up for 3 different Mommy and Me classes before she was even past her first trimester. I was being supportive, Mom protested. You were being suffocating, I corrected. And Adela knows it. Don't you, Adela? My sister looked down at her hands, not denying it. That's what you do, Mom. You take over. You decide what's best and then you make it happen, regardless of what anyone else wants. And I wasn't about to let you do that with my children. So, you just cut me out completely? The hurt in her voice would have moved me once. Before 5 years of being called broken. Before today's performance about damaged goods. I protected my family, I said simply. From the moment I saw those 3 heartbeats on the ultrasound, I knew I had a choice. I could tell you, and spend the next 9 months fighting about every decision, what doctor to use, what hospital to deliver at, whether to breastfeed, what kind of cribs to buy. Or I could have a peaceful pregnancy, focused on keeping 3 tiny humans alive inside a body you declared too broken to do exactly that. Lily had discovered Adela's gift pile and was carefully examining a stuffed giraffe. Adela made no move to stop her. Every week of that pregnancy was precarious. I continued. Dr. Morrison had me on modified bed rest from week 20. Every day I didn't go into early labor was a victory. Every week they stayed inside meant better chances of survival. I wasn't about to add your stress and interference to an already high-risk situation. I would have helped, Mom said, but her voice had lost its certainty. Helped? Like you helped today by announcing to 40 people that I'm too broken to be a mother? Like you helped 5 years ago by declaring my life over before I'd even processed what the doctors said. The ballroom had gone silent again. Even the children seemed to sense the tension. Mason had stopped climbing and was watching me with his serious expression, the one that made him look far older than 2. You want to know the real reason I kept them secret? I asked. Because I knew that the moment you found out, my children would stop being mine. They'd become your do-over. Your chance to control a narrative you'd already decided I'd failed at. And I refused to let that happen. That's not fair, Mom whispered. No, I agreed. What's not fair is spending 5 years being treated like a cautionary tale. What's not fair is sitting through family dinners where everyone tiptoes around my supposed tragedy while you give Adela advice about her future children. What's not fair is coming to this baby shower and being called damaged goods in front of everyone who matters to our family. Can we just take a moment? If you've ever had to choose between family approval and protecting what matters most, leave a comment below. I read every single one, and I want to hear your story. Hit subscribe if you're here for real talk about family boundaries, because Amanda's about to draw some lines in the sand. Mom set down her champagne glass with a sharp click. We need to talk. Privately. I glanced at Sarah, who nodded and began gathering the children. Lily protested, reaching for me, but Sarah distracted her with a stuffed elephant. Within moments, she'd shepherded all 3 toward the corner of the ballroom where a play area had been set up for any guest's children, empty until now. The terrace, Mom said, not a suggestion. I followed her through the French doors onto the Sterling Roses stone terrace. The October air was crisp, and I could hear the faint sound of traffic from Commonwealth Avenue below. The door clicked shut behind us, muffling the shocked murmurs inside. Mom turned on me immediately. How dare you humiliate me like that? I humiliated you? The laugh escaped before I could stop it. You just spent 10 minutes telling a room full of people that I'm too broken to function as a woman, and you think I humiliated you? I was trying to normalize the conversation around your condition. Stop calling it a condition. My voice rose despite my attempt to stay calm. I had a medical complication that doctors said made pregnancy unlikely. Not impossible. Unlikely. And somehow you twisted that into a death sentence for my entire existence. You let me believe you couldn't have children. I never said I couldn't.
You decided that.
You heard low chance and immediately translated it to never. Then you built an entire narrative around my failure before I'd even had time to process what the doctors actually told me. Mom's hands were shaking. I spent 5 years grieving grandchildren I thought I'd never have. And whose fault is that? I stepped closer, my heels clicking on stone. You could have asked. At any point in the last 3 years, you could have asked how I was really doing, what my life actually looked like. But you never did, because you were too invested in the tragedy you'd created. That's not true. I asked about you constantly. No, you asked about my emptiness constantly. You asked if I'd found meaning, if I was coping, if I'd accepted my limitations. You never once asked if I was happy, if my life was full, if maybe, just maybe, things had changed since that diagnosis 5 years ago. Mom's face crumpled slightly, but I wasn't done. Do you know what you said to me last Christmas? When I brought homemade cookies shaped like teddy bears. She shook her head. You said it was sweet that I was trying to have maternal outlets. That baking was a healthy way to process my loss. Those cookies were for my children's Christmas party, Mom. Lily had specifically requested teddy bears. But instead of asking why I was making children's cookies, you assumed it was some kind of grief therapy. How was I supposed to know? By asking. By treating me like a person instead of a tragedy. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. Every interaction with you for 5 years has been filtered through this lens of pity. And today you decided to make it public. To announce to everyone that I'm damaged goods. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. You absolutely did. Because this is what you do, Mom. You take control of narratives. You decide what's true, and then you make everyone else accept your version of reality. She was silent for a long moment, staring out at the city skyline. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. I want to meet them properly. Get to know my grandchildren. Why? I asked flatly. Because they're my family. Because I'm their grandmother. And if I say no? Her head snapped toward me. You can't keep them from me forever. Watch me. Mom's expression hardened. You're being cruel. I'm being protective, I corrected. There's a difference. And the fact that you can't see that difference is exactly why we're in this situation. They're my grandchildren. I have rights. You have nothing, I said clearly. Legally, morally, practically, you have nothing except what I choose to give you. And right now, after what you just did in there, I'm not inclined to give you anything at all. She reached for the terrace railing, gripping it tightly. Amanda, please. I know I made mistakes, but... Mistakes? I moved to stand beside her, looking out at the same skyline. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. A mistake is double-booking lunch plans. What you did in there was calculated. You stood in front of 40 people and weaponized my medical history to make yourself look like a martyr. You called me damaged goods to my face and framed it as acceptance. I was trying to honor your journey. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop with the therapeutic language. You weren't honoring anything. You were performing. And my children will never be props in your performances. The silence stretched between us. Inside, I could hear Lily's laugh, bright and uninhibited. The sound of a child who'd never been told she was broken or limited or less than enough. So what now? Mom's voice had lost its fight. You just disappear again? Take my grandchildren and vanish. That depends entirely on you. She turned to look at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine uncertainty in her expression. Here are my terms, I said.
Non negoziable.
You want access to my children? You respect my parenting decisions. No undermining, no suggestions that are really demands, no trying to take over. You meet them on my schedule, in my space, under my supervision. Amanda, I'm not finished. You never, ever speak about my medical history to anyone without my explicit permission. You don't explain their existence to people. You don't tell the story of how shocked you were. You don't make my pregnancy into your miracle narrative. But people will ask. And you'll say that I value my privacy and change the subject. That's it. That's the only acceptable response. Mom's jaw tightened, but she nodded slowly. And most importantly, I continued, my voice dropping lower, if you ever try to make my children feel guilty for existing outside your control, if you try to manipulate them the way you've manipulated me, if you treat them like your emotional support animals or your second chance at perfect grandparenting, I will cut you off completely.
No warningness.
No second chances. That's harsh. That's motherhood, I said simply. My job isn't to manage your feelings or protect your ego. My job is to protect them. And I'm very, very good at my job. She was quiet for a long moment, processing. And if I agree to these terms? Then maybe you get to be Grandma Beatrice. Supervised visits. Holidays at my house. The occasional FaceTime call.
But you earn their trust, Mom.
You don't get it automatically because of biology. When did you become so hard? When I became a mother, I said. The same day you decided I was too broken to be one. I turned to go back inside, then paused at the door. I'm taking the kids home now. If you want to try this, really try, with actual respect for my boundaries, you can call me next week. We'll schedule something neutral.
A park, maybe.
1 hour. We'll see how it goes. And if I can't accept your terms? I met her eyes steadily. Then you already made your choice. And it won't be my children who suffer for it. Wait until you see the looks on those 40 faces when Amanda walks back in that ballroom. If this story has had you on the edge of your seat, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I drop stories like this every single week. You won't want to miss what happens next. Inside, Sarah had corralled all 3 kids near the stroller. They looked tired now, the excitement wearing off into the cranky territory that preceded nap time. Lily was rubbing her eyes. Sophie had her thumb back in her mouth. The 40 guests were still scattered around the ballroom, whispering in tight clusters. Adela sat alone at her gift table, one hand on her belly, staring at nothing. I walked to my children, crouching down to their level. Ready to go home, babies? Home. Mason agreed emphatically. Snack. Yes, snack at home. Maybe grilled cheese. All 3 nodded enthusiastically. Sarah began buckling them back into the stroller with practiced efficiency. I stood and addressed the room at large. My voice carried easily in the near silence. Thank you all for the entertainment. It's been enlightening. No one responded. Jennifer looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Carol had tears on her cheeks. Diane was very carefully studying her hands. I turned to Adela. Congratulations on your pregnancy. I hope your daughter brings you as much joy as my 3 have brought me. She blinked rapidly. Amanda, I didn't know. I never would have said those things if. Yes, you would have, I said gently. Because you believed what Mom told you. We all believe the stories we're told, until we have a reason not to. Sarah had the stroller ready. The children were secured, patient in that way toddlers are when they know comfort is imminent. I gripped the handle, feeling the familiar weight of them all together. Enjoy the rest of your shower, I said to the room. Try the cake. It looks expensive. And then I walked out of the Sterling Rose ballroom, my 3 miracles rolling ahead of me, leaving 40 witnesses to remember that sometimes the women they call broken are actually the ones who refuse to shatter.